way to a keg or a can, it's something that someone's going to like.
Yeah, and identifying kind of the trends and everything like that. If you're not too familiar with the Maine beer scene, especially the Portland area, it is absolutely just wild. There are more breweries per capita than anywhere in the country. I mean, it is incredible. And these breweries are, it's wild that this community, this small Maine community, can support this many breweries. And part of it is the fact that the breweries are creating such incredible beer. If you're looking for New England IPAs, hazy IPAs, this is the place to be. It is absolutely incredible what people are doing. But it also creates a very unique challenge, which is if we're making a great New England IPA, we can have a truly standout IPA, which I believe that we have. And you can still not get any traction in the market because there are already, at every turn, truly outstanding IPAs. And part of that is what has led us to kind of look for ways that we can stand out with our identity and our offerings. So we definitely do have a lager-focused kind of identity because we believe that's where a lot of the trends are happening. People realize that you can make a really flavorful, well-balanced lager that will stand out now. And I think, one, we're all getting a little older.
Yep.
And as much as we love our IPA, it's like I can't go to the bank and just, take down 5 New England IPAs anymore. One, I have stomach issues because I'm an old man. And number 2, it's, I'd like to sleep and wake up and do my job in the morning. So it is kind of interesting. I think that there is definitely a trend for people to find some more approachable beers that they can have a couple of. And it's also what's led us to a really unique offering that we have, which is a cold IPA. Dan created this incredible cold IPA that we call Cryoscape. And it is, I can let him get into the details of it, but it's a different style of IPA that kind of sets us apart from those New England styles so that we can go into the market with something that shows some differentiation. And I don't even want to try to get into details. I can let Dan actually take over right then.
Okay, thanks, John. It's so the cold IPA, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the style, but essentially it's an IPA that's fermented at cold temperatures. So it changes the ester profile of a beer, and it can make an IPA take on sort of a lager-like characteristic without, having to worry about there being some of the sulfur compounds that you get from the lager yeasts. I've brewed a number of IPLs in the past, and some of them I thought were great, and others not so much. And it just seems that the American hops, the real, tropical or citrusy hops that are very popular these days, don't really work out well with lager yeast. So the cold IPA I saw as an opportunity to really kind of marry those two things, to bring the really, really flavorful contemporary American aroma and flavor hops with that same quality that we like to have in our sessionable, drinkable lagers. And, it really came together well. We included cryo hops in it again because that's, something that is very enticing for the hop heads out there. But, we keep the ABV on it low, so it's in the mid-5s, I believe. So it's really approachable. And, the cold fermentation process just gives it a very clean, crisp palate. It's the base malt is essentially all base malt just to keep the beer nice and light. It's crystal clear. And it's sort of, the name is sort of a nod not only to the fact that we're using cryo hops, but also that our local geology was shaped by glaciers to a great extent. So it was a way of kind of, tying together a couple of things, an ingredient for this beer, but also a nod to, what sort of shaped our local environment.
This beer, I get so excited talking about it, and I never miss the opportunity to sing its praises because it's one of those beers that just keeps growing on you. So you have one, and you're like, oh, that's good. Then you have another, and you're like, it just keeps getting better and better to the point where now I think I have a problem, but that's my own personal struggle. But I know I absolutely love this beer. But again, it positions us to show some differentiation in this marketplace, which has so many incredible breweries and so many incredible IPAs out there. It just gives us a little bit something different to offer, which is, I think, very, very exciting.
I have definitely seen the cold IPA. It slowly made its way down here to Texas as well. And I mean, obviously, the hazies will all come through here, the West Coast, New England, Double Dry, all those. And it is always fun to see, because obviously when things evolve, they, can become their own little animal, and everybody's got their own little tweak on how they do this, that, and the other. And obviously the different hops you can use. So I love seeing that, as much as the IPA has obviously become a juggernaut when it comes to the craft beer scene, and a lot of people only think of IPAs when they think of the craft beer scene, that we're still tweaking it and making it more approachable for people that, there's a lot of times you can even just take a whiff of an IPA and you're like, nope, I'm good. That's all hops. I'm not going to do it. But, there are the people that will, sometimes try to suffer through it, or like you said, Father Time is undefeated. So we're all getting older. Our bodies are all changing and becoming things that, are not the same when we were in our 20s. So I have friends who have to take Lactaid before they, have too many IPAs because it messes their stomach up. So, and there's other people that's all they drink, and so they're fine. So, but I love that we are still evolving the IPA scene to where we're making it more approachable for people that don't like IPAs, but they'll give it a try. And then once they try it, they're like, oh, well, I like this IPA, so maybe I'll only try to find maybe cold IPAs in the future.
Yeah, it's really, as to the point that you made, it's nice that this style is just continually evolving. There are all these new takes on IPAs, starting from some of the real bitter bombs from the Pacific Northwest, and then, our interpretation here on the East Coast, and then the New England IPA, and now the cold IPA. It's a really cool addition to the IPA family. It's pretty different from an IPL, largely because we're using an ale yeast and not a lager yeast, but it just creates a crisp, clean profile that's just really easy to drink. And I've brought my fair share of the Cryoscape home as well, and my wife tried it. She typically just sticks with Pilsner. She says, I'm from the Midwest. I just like yellow fizzy beer. So we just keep Pilsner on draft at home. But she tried Cryoscape, and she said, wow, that's really good. If I went to a bar and they didn't have a Pilsner, I would not only drink this as a substitute, but I would drink it and enjoy it as a substitute. And I was like, oh, wow, that's great. So it really kind of hit that target market of us, putting forward a very sessionable but still very hop-forward beer.
Yeah, and I love the direction that, you're talking about of things kind of progressing, how back in the day you were getting these really hop-forward beers, and now it seems like, in general, the whole industry is able to take it to the next level. It's not just about cramming as much flavor in there as possible. It's about finding the balance for these beers to truly make them remarkable. It's something I think is Dan's strong suit, especially with those lagers, because with a lager, there's nowhere to hide. You're not going to hide behind all these flavors. You have to craft the beer exceptionally well, and that's something that he does. It's the balance between the flavor, the malt characteristic, the hop, and then leaving there with some bitterness but not overwhelming, and then finishing really crisp is something that you see throughout all of our beers, and it's something that Dan's extraordinary at.
Thanks, John. You make a guy blush over here.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I have had multiple conversations with other breweries, and I've said that kind of, I also feel like where the craft beer scene is going, because, it's a pendulum situation. We've started with lagers, and then we've gone, full tilt, where there's a brewery here in the Metroplex that has made a pickle beer that has just absolutely gone crazy. And then you go with the dark stouts or the bourbon barrel stouts, or, slamming 30 cheesecakes in a stout kind of beer, and then everything kind of in between. And then, like you mentioned, you can't hide anything in a lager. Like, it takes a little longer. It really shows what you can do as a craft brewer, because if your lager is not good, the rest of your beers probably aren't going to be as good either, because, you're probably cramming too much flavors or trying to hide too much stuff in the IPAs or the stouts or whatever it is. But multiple breweries I've talked to, if they go to a new brewery, they try their lager first, because then you can really tell, kind of like if you are going to a donut place for the first time, try their glazed donut. If their glazed donut's not good, the rest of the donuts aren't going to be that good either. So if your basic lager is not going to be good, the rest of your beers probably aren't going to be up to snuff either.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I mean, there really isn't anywhere to hide behind, with a Pilsner. There's, it's a very, very simple, delicate beer. So if there's a flaw there, it's pretty apparent. And yeah, it's something that we keep, a really, really close eye on. So we, can, put forward that beer consistently, so that the aroma is the same. We don't have any sort of off flavors, to the beer. So the team and I work very hard to make sure that, we're putting forward those beers because, yeah, it's, if you make a batch that's got an off flavor to it, that's not really something that you want to put in front of your customer. And, yeah, it's good just to see that there are a lot of breweries that are putting, Pilsners or other varieties of light lagers on their menu. And yeah, sometimes it's a little disheartening to go and go, oh, great, it's a great warm day. I'm going to have this Pilsner, and you take a sip and it's like, they dry hopped it with mosaic or something, or I don't know what they did. So it's, some people take some liberties with things that, it's like, no, just don't mess with that, leave good enough alone. But yeah, I totally am on board with what a lot of, your friends and other brewers do is it's okay, I'm going to go in and try the lager. And if that's not great, I sort of feel like they have some work to do in terms of their process.
Yeah, it's been fun to see the offerings that we have in that category evolve too. I mean, beyond the Loon Call Pilsner, we also have a Vienna Lager. We have a Canadian Pilsner, and now our dark lager, Acadian Skies, is one of my favorites too. We decided to make that a core beer as opposed to a porter or a stout, just because we really love that it's got this great malt characteristic and has all that flavor in there and finishes just so crisp and clean. It really kind of rounds out the offerings very well. And then in addition to that, each year we make a whole series of Oktoberfest beers, a whole lineup from a Meriton to Fest beer to, remember we did Doppelbock, and did a whole thing, and we had a huge celebration in Biddeford, which was fantastic, with a few other local breweries that are fantastic too. And yeah, it's really cool to be able to offer a genuine lineup, a genuine fest lineup too, and also just see all of these lagers and pilsners kind of evolve. It's been very, very cool.
Yeah, and walking into the tasting room here where we are now, and seeing a bunch of people sitting at the bar drinking a glass boot full of a Fest beer or a Meriton, or if they're really, really daring, a Doppelbock. But that's a bad idea. You better not be driving if you're drinking a boot full of Doppelbock. That's a heavy hitter. But yeah, it's neat. People get into it, so it's cool to see that being, that people are enjoying the lager portfolio that we're putting forward, because yeah, there are breweries that will sort of lean into Oktoberfest, but they'll have, maybe a Fest beer on, and then it's just a bunch of hoppy IPAs. It's like, I'm glad you're recognizing some of the, important history of beer, but the rest of it, you're kind of missing the mark a little bit. They have like a super pretzel on the menu and, a Fest beer, and then everything else is hopped excessively. It's not really the same vibe.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's so many people that like, oh, it's Oktoberfest. Yeah, let's make a Fest beer. And then everything else is what their normal stuff is. But I like that you guys really lean into it and you do more than just the Fest beer. And it's funny because, we all see, the videos and, of, these waitresses in lederhosen, carrying 15 beers at one time. And we all wish that we were over in, Germany for Oktoberfest, but it's a little expensive to do. So coming here to America, and if you have a brewery, why not lean into it? Even if you don't have German heritage, it's just a fun thing, and you're all celebrating, Oktoberfest together. So lean into it more, where you're more than just the Fest beers. You're making other inspired beers as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And, we were fortunate to have a couple of other really good local breweries join us, and they had some really nice, seasonally appropriate lager offerings to put forward. So, yeah, it was